Okay, so good evening, class. I am attorney Gisine Gale Paler-Acasio, and I will be your instructor for CLJ 4, Revised Penal Code Book 2. So this is the second part of the Revised Penal Code. So this is the Revised Penal Code, Codal Provisions. Book 1 comprises the general principles of criminal law, while Book 2 talks about the specific crimes and penalties. So Book 2 starts with Article 11 for Article 114. So I already sent you a module and you can download it and read it along with my discussion. So, as I have said, we will be covering two titles for um, our pre-midterm. So, first we have crimes against national security and crimes against fundamental laws of the state. So, the crimes against national security covers Article 114 to 123. Okay, so let's go to the first title in Book 2, Crimes and Penalties, the Crimes Against National Security and the Law of Nations. So what do you mean by national security and law of nations? So these crimes, when you commit these crimes, they are of very serious nature because it threatens not just the personal lives and properties of individuals but the state as a whole. So what are these crimes against national security? First, we have treason. So, kaning treason, the last time that I remember that the treason is filed was during, um, I think that was 2015, 2016, 2017. It was filed against former Senator Antonio Trillanes and former President Benigno Noynoy Aquino. So they were charged with the crime of treason. However, the case was dismissed. Why? So, how can a person commit treason? First and foremost, the person must be a Filipino citizen or a resident alien. So, dapat Filipino citizen ka. Kung dili ka Filipino citizen, resident alien ka. What do you mean by resident alien? You are a foreigner, however, you are already living in the Philippines for a period of time. So, nagpudyo na ka sa Pilipinas. And then, aside from that, unsa pa may laing requisites in order for a person to commit treason. Second, uh, the said person, resident alien, or Filipino citizen levies war against the government of the Philippines. So, makigira against sa gobyerno sa Pilipinas or adheres to its enemies, giving them aid and comfort. So, duha ang pwedeng acts, criminal acts in the crime of treason. Number one, if ikaw nga Filipino citizen or resident alien makigira sa gobyerno sa Pilipinas. Second, or ninglaban ka sa kontra sa Pilipinas by giving them aid or comfort. Ang imong sa kaning tabang ka sa kontra sa Pilipinas, then you commit the crime of treason. However, please remember that treason is a war crime. So, war crime ni si Jam. When you say war crime, dapat na ay gira. Kung why gira, dili pwede makommit ang treason. So, that is the reason why the case filed, the treason case filed against Trillanes and former President Aquino was dismissed because definitely the requisite of being a war crime was not there. Wa may gira atong panahon na. So how can a person commit treason if why gira? How can you say nga na ay gira? Under our Philippine Constitution, only the Congress, no? Only the Congress by 2/3 votes can declare a war. Bisan pag nagpinusilay na diha, kung wag officially declare sa Congress na there is indeed war, then you cannot you cannot be held for the crime of treason. So again, it is a wartime crime and cannot be committed in times of peace. So as you all know, we are not yet in any times of war, bisig na tayo mga drug war, COVID war, but nevertheless, it is not a wartime that is officially declared by the Congress, then you cannot commit the crime of treason. Okay. Um, in treason, if why two witnesses ma-present ang prosecution nga ning testify that you committed treason or you committed any act of treason, then you cannot be convicted. So sa treason, there is what you call the two-witness rule. So in order to become liable for the crime of treason, dapat na ay two witnesses saying that you commit the same act no, in open court. So, dapat mo testify sila sa court. Can a Filipino citizen commit the crime of treason if he is not in the Philippines? Yes, no? He can commit the crime of treason if he is outside the Philippines, if he is a Filipino citizen. But if he is a resident alien, if foreigner ka, dapat nagpudyo ka diri sa Pilipinas in order to commit the crime of treason. So again, that is the first crime against national security, treason. And again, this is a war crime. Article 1115 talks about conspiracy and proposal to commit treason. So, if you remember in your book 1, the mere act of conspiring is not punishable by law. Kung nagsabot-sabot pa naman mo nga mo commit mo og bisag unsa nga crime kay nagsabot pa man or nagpropose pa man nga mobuhat og crime, dili ka pwede ipriso. However, there is an exception to the rule. Except if ang inyong sabot-sabutan o inyong gi-propose nga himuon nga crime is the crime of treason. Nga naman, because it is all about national security. So, bisag nag-propose pa mo or nagsabot pa mo nga mo commit sa crime nga treason, if masakpan mo, then you will be held liable under the law. So, the mere act of planning to commit the crime of treason will make you be held criminally liable. Okay. And then, Article 1116, that is misprision of treason. Unsa man po ning misprision of treason? Connected gihapon sila sa treason, but nevertheless, dahil po ni, you are a third person, and then you are a Filipino citizen, and then naa kay knowledge, nakahibaw ka nga na ay mga tao nga mo commit og treason and wa ka nagsaba, wa nimo sila gisumbong. So the mere fact na nakahibaw ka nga naay mo commit og treason and then wa ka ning sumbong, then you may also be held criminally liable. Okay. So that is treason. Three crimes connected to treason. Again, we have treason, the act itself. We have conspiracy and proposal to commit treason. Sabot-sabot nga mohimo no sa crime na treason, and misprision of treason, meaning kahibaw ka nga na ay treasonous act nga i-commit pero wa ka ning sumbong. And then, another crime against national security is espionage. Espionage. Just like treason, espionage is a war crime. So, why kiha nga espionage o treason kung why gira? So, unsa man po ng espionage? Familiar man siguro mo ng espionage. Spying in layman's term pa. So, legally, we call that espionage. Unsa man ng espionage? It is committed by any person who without authority, any person who without authority, meaning dili siya allowed unta mosod, enters a warship fort, naval, or military establishment or reservation to obtain any information, plans, photographs, or other data of a confidential nature relative to the defense of the Philippine archipelago. So, if ikaw, unauthorized ka nga person, and then naigira, and then ingsod ka sa mga atong mga bases, and then ningtanaw ka sa mga information or mga data or anything confidential in nature about atong national defense, then you can be held for the crime of espionage. The mayor nga pak nga nisod ka, ningtanaw ka, and you have no authority to do it. Second, by being in possession by reason of public office he holds of the articles, data, or information referred to in the preceding paragraph, discloses their contents to a representative of a foreign nation. So, for example, military officer ka, intelligence officer ka, ikaw ang nagunit sa atong security and defense plan. And then, imo si Jang gileak sa atong sa lain nga nation, sa foreign nation, for whatever reason nga nung imong gileak, then you may be held criminally liable for espionage. No? So, basically, espionage is about spying and divulging our national defenses. And again, this is a war crime. So, treason and espionage, they cannot be committed in times of peace. It can only be committed in times of war. Okay, let's move on to section 2, provoking war and disloyalty in case of war. So, provoking war na pod ni and disloyalty in times of war. So, Article 118, inciting to war or giving motives for reprisals. So, unsa man yung inciting to war? What do you mean by inciting to war? Kanang mabuhat ka og mga butang nga maka-provoke, maka-push sa usa ka nation nga masuko, nga makigira na hinuon nato. No, so mga ing-ana. So, what is inciting to war? It is committed by a person who by unlawful or unauthorized acts provokes or gives occasion for war involving or liable to involve the Philippines, or exposes Filipino citizens to reprisals of their persons or property. So, anything nga imong buhaton against a specific nation nga suko nila, then that is inciting to war. One of the examples given in the book is a public officer, no, who burns a flag of a different state in public to protest the execution of a Filipino maid convicted of a crime. So there was a time nga natoy Filipino maid in Singapore who was to be executed patjon by bitay because nakakommit ko na siya og crime. And tungod sa kasuko ato nga public officer, iyang gisunog ang flag sa Singapore. That act is inciting to war or giving motives for reprisals because it disrespects the other states, no? And to the point nga masuko na sila pag-adyo, okay? Disrespecting their national flag which is a symbol of their state. And then we have Article 119, Violation of Neutrality. This is a war crime because when you say violation of neutrality, naigira and then way labot ang Philippines. And ikaw nga citizen ka, nag-apil-apil ka nga makaamong na hinoong ka nga maapil ang Philippines. No, so if for example, moingon ang Philippines nga dili ta pwede mo adto sa Hong Kong ron kay nagagubot dito, di ka mag-apil-apil sa mga rallies sa again Hong Kong pro-China or anti-China and then nag-apil-apil jud ka. So sa the fact na nag-apil-apil ka and you are a Filipino, then you violate the neutrality of the Philippines. So you may be held liable for violation of neutrality. Basically, this is an old law, no? So far, what the jurisprudence aning violation of neutrality. And then correspondence to hostile country. Article 120. So, unsa man yung hostile country? Again, this is in times of war. So, if you are a Filipino citizen, and then amigo ka, storya or amigo ka sa atong enemy country in times of war, then you may be held criminally liable. No? So, unsa may mga acts of correspondence, no? Mag-send og mga letters, mag-send og mga notices, information which might be useful for the enemy. So, for example, musumbong ka na ami base nakabutang nagtago diri somewhere sa Mindoro. Imo senda ng atong enemy country. So, at risk ang atong mga troops. Then, that is violation of Article 120, correspondence with hostile country. So, again, war crime so far so good. Kaya wa pa man tay war rong mga panahon na. And then Article 121, again, a war crime, flight to enemy's country. So, for example, naay gira, naatay kontra nga country, giprohibit na sa gobyerno nga molarga ng lugara, but namugos or ning takas jud ka nga molarga ng lugara, then you can be held liable for flight to enemy's country under Article 121. So again, these are basically war crimes. 118, inciting to war or giving motives for reprisals. Article 119, violation of neutrality, basically it's a war crime. Article 120, correspondence with hostile country. And Article 121, flight to enemy's country. So these are war crimes. So again, okay. So mo to ang mga laws against national security. Now, ano na may law of nations, no? Under the law of nations, piracy is punishable under the law of nations. Unsa man ng piracy? Kana ba nang mokopya ka o pirated nga mga videos? Mag-download ka, mag-save ka, i-burn sa CD. Sa unang panahon, i-save na day sa USB ron. Is that the piracy that is gleaned by Article 122? So when you say piracy and mutiny on the high seas or in Philippine waters, so when you say piracy in the high seas, kato dyan yung pirates na naa sa dagat, no? Kanang mga hijack o mga vessels, whether cargo or passenger vessels. So what is a piracy? It is committed by any person who, not being a member of the ship or a passenger of the ship, shall attack or seize a vessel, its equipment, or personal belongings of the complements or passengers. So basically, mga pirates, mo ni kanang, if nakakita mo sa movies na ay mga cargo ships, mutapad sa cargo ship, musakay sa cargo ship, mangawat. That is basically piracy in the high seas. So for example, og dito gi-commit sa international waters, pwede ba makiha diri sa Philippines? Yes. Because under the law of nations, pwede ra ma-file ang criminal case of piracy anywhere because it is an international crime. It is an international crime. So again, piracy, when a person who is not a passenger or a crew shall attack a vessel, its equipment, or personal belongings of its complement or passengers. Okay. So, mo na siya. Mangawat sila dito sa barko. So, that is piracy. But naatay gitawag og qualified piracy. Unsa may pasabot anong qualified piracy? Mas musaka, mas bugat pa nga klase nga piracy. Ngano man, kay nganong how when will piracy be qualified? Meaning musaka ang iyang degree of punishment. Number one, when they have seized a vessel by boarding or firing the same. So if na may mga pirates nga motapad ra and then magsinggit-singgit ra mangawat, not necessarily mosakay sa ship o mopusil sa ship. Kaya may mga pirates nga way arms. But if ang pirates is mosakay sa ship and then mamusil pagadyon, mogamit sila og any arms, then that is qualified piracy. So, another circumstance that qualifies piracy is whenever they abandon their victims without the means of saving themselves. Now, for example, after nila nangawat, after nila nang hijack, and then ilang gihiktan ilang mga victims and ilang gipasink ang ship. So, ano sila way nga ilang masave, ilang kaugalingon, then it qualifies piracy. And then the last circumstance which qualifies piracy is when it is accompanied by murder or homicide. For meaning aside sa pangawat, ilang gipatay ang mga crew or passengers of the vessel. Or if nila pat dyan ay physical injuries. Or there is rape. Nang rape sila o badge or lucky nga crew member or passenger. So again, these three circumstances qualifies piracy. So if the piracy is qualified, then the penalty will be reclusion perpetua to death. But if katurang piracy ra, nga katong dili qualified piracy, reclusion perpetua. However, sa qualified piracy, as of now, Article 123, we only impose reclusion perpetua because of the suspension of the death penalty law. Okay, so that is piracy and piracy under Article 122 and qualified piracy under Article 123. Now, what is mutiny? Okay, piracy in general and mutiny man in the high seas. So, if piracy, ang mga nangawat is mga dili crew or passengers sa ship, ang sa mutiny is ang murag nagkagubot or nagda sa gubot is ang mga crew or members sa ship. So, when you say there is mutiny, there is an attempt to usurp the command of the vessel from the master or overthrowing the legal authority with an intent to remove him. So, basically, ang difference sa piracy, dili sila member or crew sa vessel. Sa mutiny, ilang itatangon ang captain and then any member or crew sa vessel ang mupuli as the captain of the ship. So that is mutiny. Okay, so again, that is the crime against national security and the law of nations covering Article 1140 covering Article 114, treason until Article 123, qualified